Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
Hilton brings you new ways to stay with experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Coach Bill and I over at Coaching Youth Hoops are giving away a free clinic this fall at some point. And you can find that at coachingyouthhoops.com/clinic. And I'll put that down in the show notes. And then we're also kind of starting this dynamic app that's, I think, is going to be very helpful for youth coaches at coachingyouthhoops.com/waitlist. So go over and check that out. And let's head off the podcast.
From the Fifth Quarter Studio in Madison, Wisconsin, you're listening to the Coaching Youth Hoops Podcast.
They're playing basketball.
Here's our hosts, Steve Collins, and Bill Flitter.
Coaches, welcome to another episode of Coaching Youth Hoops. I'm your host, Coach Bill Flitter, and today we have a guest, Brendan Winters from Pro Skills Basketball, former player and now huge club basketball owner. So definitely want to dive into that. Brendan, thanks for coming on the podcast today. How you doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bill. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So why don't you give our listeners just who is Brendan Winters, your background, and tell us a bit about Pro Skills before we dive in.
Yeah, sure. I grew up the son of an NBA player. So I was born in Milwaukee. My dad played for the Bucks, and then he became a coach. And so I was kind of born into a basketball family. My dad coached. He started off at Princeton when Pete Carrill was there. Just did that a couple of years, and then he became an NBA assistant coach. And that's when the journey really started, I think. And so I lived in 7 or 8 different cities growing up. Moved all around the country, got to be exposed to youth hoops in, all regions of the U.S. I was even in Vancouver, Canada for a little bit. He was the first head coach of the Vancouver Grizzlies, but always dreamed of playing in the NBA. That was always my goal, worked really hard at it. My dad never pushed me to be a basketball player, but he was certainly willing to help me. And I ended up going to play at Davidson. This is right before Steph Curry got there. So I was literally the 4 years right before Steph came in. So we were, a little bit of a smaller name then. Had some opportunities to try out for various NBA teams. Just wasn't good enough. But went overseas for a handful of years and was playing over there and decided with one of my Davidson teammates to start a basketball camp in the Davidson area, it's about 30 minutes north of Charlotte in North Carolina. And we called it Pro Skills Basketball because our idea was, let's take the skills and the drills and the values that we were learning as pros overseas, and then also that we learned at Davidson, let's bring it to the kids, and let's also get college players, pro players to work just like we were at the time. So that's where the name came from. It has nothing to do with us thinking we're going to turn kids into pros or anything like that. We did that for a few summers, and it grew and grew, and we really enjoyed it. And we were both ready to retire about the same time from playing. And because we had this summer camp, we thought we might be able to do it year round and give it a shot full time. So that's what we did. So about 2011 or 2012, we retired. We moved back to Charlotte, North Carolina, and started Pro Skills full time. And the initial idea was just, hey, let's kind of do an academy, meaning skill work, clinics, training, camps, all that. Nothing to do with teams. It was just going to be straight a skills academy.
Mm-hmm.
But pretty quickly, we got some parents begged us to start some AAU teams. We didn't really know what that was all about. Did a little research, realized it was, even at the time, it was like pretty toxic, not great. Like, so we decided, like, okay, maybe there's an opportunity here for us to kind of change that culture and help some kids. So we pivoted into kind of the AAU side, and from there, it's kind of taken off over the last 10-ish years or so. And here we are today, and we're in 20 cities around the U.S. with our main thing is AAU teams. We call them club teams just because of the AAU kind of connotation, negative connotation, I guess. But so we've got about 200 teams or so in 20 cities, and we're expanding pretty quickly. And so that's where we are today.
Wow. Did you say 200 teams?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It
Man.
is,
But you got
you
got staff to help with that. And I mean, it's a legitimate business. It's not just some guy starting a few teams. It's a business.
Yeah. No, I mean, we realized early on that kind of a lot of the model was just like, hey, just guys like kind of throwing out jerseys here and there. Like, yeah, you want to coach, you have a team, sure, take these jerseys and go do whatever you want. And ours was the complete opposite of that. We're kind of control freaks. We believe in doing things a certain way. And again, a lot of it comes from Davidson, comes from overseas. And our model was, we're going to hire coaches. So we're not going to do like the mommy daddy ball thing. We're going to pay them for their time, not a ton, but probably better than volunteering, but it's essentially volunteering. But we're gonna interview them. They're gonna need to be qualified. They're gonna be positive. We're gonna practice twice a week. We're not gonna play every weekend. We're not gonna travel around the country chasing 6th grade national championships and things like that. And then we're gonna also do workouts and clinics and keep that skill. That focus on skill development in there as well. So that's what we did. And it really took off. And then honestly, we got lucky. Like we just knew some guys from playing overseas, include one of my best friends who I grew up with in Denver, Colorado. He had been playing in Spain and he was ready to retire. And we had been doing it a year in Charlotte. And I said, hey, come live with me. We need some help. I think you'll like this. He comes from a coaching family too. He came, did it for a year here in Charlotte, said, I love it. Let me take it back to Denver and start it up. And so we said, okay, go. And it started working in Denver. And that's when we were like, you know what? Like maybe there's some other pro guys like us that kind of don't know what they should do after they're done playing that want to do this and will be really good at it. And that's how we started expanding into other cities. That was never the intention from the start. We kind of just lucked into it or fell into it. And from there, we've just been able to grow to like 20 cities or so. And we have some really good people on the ground in every city, starting with the city director and then the coaches and management underneath that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think you're right on, taking that approach, getting the coaches skilled up as well and certified. And they obviously have the skills, but some of the other things that come along with that, I think, are important, especially when you're coaching youth, right?
Yeah.
But let's dive into this. One of the topics that you and I had discussed was this European style of play. And I've been hearing this more and more come up in conversations. We had Alex Sarama on the show a few podcasts ago. He obviously talks about that quite a bit. And you had mentioned that 30% of NBA players are now from outside of the United States. That's a huge number, right? 30% and growing, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like the last number of years, I think you've heard people kind of say that, and you were thinking like, I mean, sometimes I was like, that seems a little subjective. Like, is that true? I wasn't sure 5-10 years ago, but like now it's like it's objective. Like the data says there was 125 players born outside the U.S. playing in the NBA this year. And the experts are coming out and saying that is probably going to grow. And if you look at the NBA draft like projections this year, I looked at it the other day, like out of the top 10, I think 6 were international or something like that. Like it was a lot. And so I do think the internet, and then you just look at what's happened in the Olympics and some of the kind of world championship stuff. And I mean, we're not blowing teams out anymore, and we are losing sometimes, and so it's the Euros are definitely catching up to us. Basketball is becoming more popular over there. Those players are getting better, getting more skilled, and our players here, it's not that they're getting less skilled, because I think they're more skilled than ever individually. It's that they don't know how to play the team game, I think. And even the coaches in the NBA and Adam Silver is talking about that. They're more skilled than ever, but they get to the NBA and they sometimes don't know how to set a proper screen. Or, just basic fundamentals that I think 10 to 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we just kind of took for granted.
Yeah, it's totally true. It's funny that you say that. Now, I'm going to bring this down to kind of a grade school level. One of the things that we worked on yesterday, because just kind of thinking about like, what is my team? What are these skills that we're lacking right now? And, one of the things that we did, we spent little over an hour on 5-on-5 no dribble.
I love no dribble.
Yeah. And just to work on pass, and I had different constraints and things I had to focus on during those times. And we did it like 8-minute sprints. So every 8 minutes I let them play. I counted the number of times I talked so I wouldn't interrupt them too much, taking notes on the sidelines. And then we did a break, right? And then we went back to the play. But just in that hour and 45, just working on, how to handle pressure and getting open and, using your cuts correctly and passing, cutting after you pass, all those just like basic stuff, and off-ball screens, although I wish they would have set more off-ball screens, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
But the point of all of that is, I think that it's really important. Again, you could say, again, you're going to have some people say, well, European players, it's just becoming more popular as time goes on, and that's why, there are more of them appearing in the draft. But let's dive into the details of that. Like, truly, what is it that you built your club team around it? We're hearing more about it. We're seeing the skilled players. What do they do different than we do here in the States?
Yeah, I think here in the States, you kind of have, if there's a spectrum, it's like, you have your kind of like 1-on-0 skill work. So you're by yourself doing your skill work, or you're working with a trainer, right? One-on-one, you're working with a trainer. Tons of kids here in the States do that. That's why they're more skilled than ever. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, or down to the far end of the spectrum, you got your 5-on-5. Everyone does that, right? And a big piece is because AAU, we play most teams play like almost every weekend in the spring and the summer. PS Pro Skills does not, but most do. Either. But what about everything in between there? I think that's what's missing. In the States, kids, they all work with trainers, one-on-one, or maybe like, hey, maybe there's 1 or 2 or 3 other kids in there, but it's all individual moves, right? It's what the reason why you were doing no dribble stuff, part of the reason is probably because there's so much wasted dribbles. They're going through their legs 5 times. They're not going anywhere with their dribble. They're over dribbling, not passing. But and that stems, I think, from a lot of the training stuff where they put up 5 cones and they make them go through the legs, behind the back, in and out. And it's just like, what are we doing here? And then on the weekends, then they'll just go play 5-on-5 games, in these AAU, where it's like, there are a lot of great AAU coaches, but there's a lot of bad ones too. And a lot of times it's just like, hey, roll the ball out and go play. So what about the playing 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 or 3-on-3 or even 4-on-4? Yeah. Like, that's where you learn how to play, especially 3-on-3. Because that's what basketball is at the end of the day. It's a lot of triangle stuff, a lot of 3-man play. And I think that's where Americans are lacking. And I know USA Basketball is doing a great job trying to get 3-on-3 going. It's great. It's going to become an Olympic sport. So hopefully that becomes more popular. But the Europeans do a ton of that. I was just in Spain 2 weeks ago with my wife. We were on vacation, but one of my buddies who is was a Davidson player, he's 10 years younger than me. He's playing in Malaga, and it's one of the best teams in the top division of Spain. I went to their practice and watched it, and they played in their practice. They played 3-on-3, then they went to 4-on-4, and then finally they played 5-on-5. But everything was controlled, situational, and maybe you go up and down once or twice. But that's just an example of, even at that pro level over there, they're playing 3-on-3, they're playing 4-on-4, and then 5-on-5 from kind of situations. And that is what I think we're lacking here in the States.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I did as well with my club team is we started a 3-on-3 league. And, we run that twice a season. And I think the best compliment I've ever received was when a parent came up to me and said, she didn't mean this positively either. It's so messy, so disorganized. Yeah. And I said, thank you.
Yeah.
I said, I was happy because, I said that learning is messy and they're figuring it out on their own. I said, now I want you to go stand on the sidelines and hear the conversations they're having with one another, hear how they're actually communicating with one another. And I said, that's where the magic happens. And that's where the beauty happens. They're figuring it out.
Yeah. And the same goes for when you do any no dribble stuff. I mean, that is ugly at first. You're like, they have no idea what to do. The first 5 minutes is like, oh, you like almost as a coach, you're like, oh my gosh, should I just end this thing? Because this is brutal. Yeah. But like, then they start figuring it out and they start learning, and then you can go, okay, now we got one dribble, and you can work your way up. But yeah, like that's part of the problem is, it is ugly, 3-on-3 or no dribble or whatever it is. But like you said, that's how you learn. And the hard thing, because we go through it too, we run 3-on-3 leagues in a lot of our cities, Charlotte, Richmond, some of our other cities. And we have parents come up to us and say, like, we just want to go play 5-on-5. We want to go to these weekend tournaments where there's a ref and 5-on-5 and this and that. And they don't understand, like, but then a lot of times, like, they'll go through a whole season of the 3-on-3 and they'll be like, oh, I get it now. Like, my kid had the ball so much more, got just so much better learning how to play. But you have to sit through that ugliness and that, uncomfortableness sometimes. And a lot of times parents will end up getting it, but you gotta convince them of it. And it's getting harder and harder, to be honest with you. It just seems like they just want to go to these gyms, play in the tournament, 5-on-5, refs, all that. Controlled. And
well, I'm glad somebody else is also experiencing that, because the comment I always hear is, I want to play real basketball.
Well, we get that a lot, and it's like, it's getting more and more, to be honest with you. That's the whole point of this. It's getting harder to say, like, hey, we're going to do 3-on-3 and like standing our ground there, because like the kickback seems to be growing for whatever reason. I have no idea why, because it's like, these 5-on-5 like tournaments or leagues are oftentimes very ugly, but for whatever reason, that's what the parents want, and they're less willing to listen to the experts, whatever coaches they are out there. And so it's getting a little more difficult, but
we'll keep at it, Coach. We'll keep at it and still plugging away. I'll work on the West Coast, and maybe we can meet in the middle and change the world a little bit. Let's dive into the details of that, though, of, if you were, or if, club owner, let's just start with the club owner. Club owner's listening right now, and he likes this idea of, the European basketball. He hears it, he sees what's going on in the NBA. What would you say to him right now, like his top 3 things to change his club or his organization?
Yeah, I would say more practice, more skill work, less games. So that's number one, is like, how many times a week are you practicing? Is it 0? Is it 1? Is it 2? Now, I'm not saying you got to practice, especially, with young kids, you don't need to practice 3 days a week, 4 or 5. but 2 days a week is pretty good for a season. And then in practice, what are you doing in that? Are you rolling the ball out and just like scrimmaging the whole time, sitting back and hanging out? Or are you actually doing intentional skill work, individual skill work, small group, team-based stuff? Mm-hmm. That's a big piece of it. So more fundamentals, less games. Are you traveling, across the country, spending more money and more time traveling when that money and time could be spent on staying home, doing skill development stuff, or even just rest? That's a big piece of it. What kind of defense are you playing? Are you playing zone? Because we all know it's easy to play zone in 3rd and 4th grade when kids can't skip past, they can't shoot threes. The easiest thing in the world is just to get a super athletic team together, press full court, get back into like some sort of trapping zone, and then just steal layup. And then these kids get to high school, they can't shoot. All they know how to play is some sort of pressing zone, but everyone's as strong and as athletic as them now. So that's like negated. And now those kids, like, they're not making their high school teams, or they were once proclaimed the best 6th grader in the state, and now they're just an average player. They're not even going to play in college because they can't shoot. They don't have some of these other skills. They don't know how to play within the team system. So, just like, what concepts are you teaching? And that part of that that's another piece, like, of the problem with the American system is the rules are all different. State to state, tournament to tournament, the shot clock stuff, the just quarters, halves, like, it's just all over the place. Whereas Europe, it's all FIBA rules. They mandate no zone, until I can't remember what age it is, 14, 15 or whatever it is. So like they grow up playing man to man. And so I think being very conscientious of like, what team concepts are you teaching, offense and defense? Are you just going to pick and rolls every single time, or are you teaching them how to play in a motion and screen off the ball, that sort of stuff? So I think those are some of the things that are a problem here in the States that I think club owners or coaches should be thinking about.
So let's dive into that. So I have I'll use me as an example. So we practice 2 times a week, and I can tell you firsthand, I changed my practice philosophy. I guess the dramatic change was last year, and I went to more skill-based practices twice a week. We hardly did any concept stuff, meaning we're going to run this play, right, or this offense, or right, but I focused on the fundamentals. Huge transformation, okay, in what we were and what the output was for the kids. But then you go to a tournament, and you have, like you said, all these different rules, zone, no zone. I mean, we actually don't have run to that. It's more about the 20-minute halves, right? You have teams that should be playing 2 levels up, and they're playing 2 levels down so they can get some wins, right? Some easy wins. Not fun for anybody. There's obviously, like you said, good and the bad with all of that. At the global level, something has to change in the States. But is that good? Is the different types of play good longer term? If I'm playing, I got some zone, some not. We see a lot of zone. So then I got to teach my players how to play against the zone, and that's going to set them up later in life. Does that delay the process of their advancement? Because now I got to teach man and zone defenses or offenses. Sorry. I just kind of want to dig into the details. In the States, we have, we go to these tournaments, we join these tournaments, we set up, in our area, even out a little bit further. The rules are the rules of the tournament, right? There's no global group that's overseeing everything. So is that good or bad? I mean, truly.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.